welcome back to the Crossing Ball, where we discuss things about philosophy, theology, current events, things that relate to the world at large and our lives in general, society, history, you name it. All right, today, let's get this. Today, I want to discuss the lyrics from two specific bands, Lorna Shore and the band Ghost. Recently, I was watching some reaction videos from various people, particularly one from a pastor who I can't remember his name actually, but he and his son react to various metal acts, and they talk about the sound of the band as well as the lyrics. So here I would like to go over the lyrics a little bit more in depth in terms of their theological and philosophical perspectives. As well, there's another song by Ghost, even though the song was not written by Ghost. It was written by a gentleman named Rocky Erickson. It's called If You Have Ghosts. The song by Lorna Shore is To the Hellfire. So let's look at these lyrics first. We're going to talk about To the Hellfire. Now, the video itself, I'm not going to show it to you because I'm not sure how that works in terms of in terms of legality and everything. I don't want to get I don't want the program to be to be flagged or whatever just because we show something that we're not supposed to show. As far as YouTube, I know that if you play something that is copywritten and you're not given permission, or you don't make it clear the purposes of your playing it on a legal level, then it will get pulled. And I don't want to get this video pulled. So we'll just go over the lyrics. I know I can talk about those. All right, this is called To the Hellfire. The video itself, this is a brand new song that they just dropped for their new album, and I believe the title of the album is To the Hellfire. I was just introduced to Lorna Shore recently. I think they are just an amazing band. They have a black metal feel, but they also sound very deathcore-ish. And they kind of remind me of a more kind of slower, oddly enough, even though they're super fast, slower but more intense, and that's hard to really say based on the band that it reminds me of, but a slower but more intense version of Infant Annihilator, which if you've never heard them, I recommend checking them out. Unless you're not into really heavy music, then I wouldn't recommend checking them out because they're very extreme. Their lyrics are very extreme as well. But I don't think they deal with the same type of issues that Lorna Shore does. So in this song, it talks about someone dying. Now, what happens when someone dies is obviously a mystery. From the Christian perspective, when someone dies, they go to heaven. Or, if they're not saved, they go to hell. In this song, it seems to suggest that everyone goes to hell. But hell is not a place that preserves the body or preserves the body of the soul. Rather, it is a place where one is absorbed. One kind of becomes a part, an atomized part of the larger whole. Now, let's look at the lyrics. So To the Hellfire. I'll hold on to feeling until my final breath escapes, gazing upon this world until it fades. Clearly, that is suggesting that this person doesn't want to die, and that they're trying to preserve every last breath, every last moment that they have alive. Kind of reminds me, this first line kind of reminds me of a scene in the movie The Seventh Seal by Ingmar Bergman. Again, I would highly recommend that you watch that film, The Seventh Seal. Probably, in my opinion, if not in my top 5, it may be the greatest movie of all time. Anyways, there's one scene where the Grim Reaper shows up. He's Death, basically. He's been trying to take this knight that has come back from the Crusades. He's been trying to claim him and bring him to the dark abode of the afterlife. The knight clearly is reluctant to go. He challenges Death to a chess match. Throughout the film, he is playing chess with Death. Now, at the very end, I hate to spoil the film, but Death has come to claim the knight as well as the entire party that he is with. One party member is an atheist, and each individual in this party has a different sort of perspective. Some might be more Christian, and there are variants within the Christian perspectives as well. The knight has one perspective. There's a couple in it. They have a different perspective. They all have different perspectives, and those perspectives are expressed in their final hours. Well, one young lady, she's very afraid, and the knight's page, which is the atheist, he suggests to the woman to cling on or hold on or just enjoy or bask in every moment that she can. Very existential suggestion or existential perspective. He's telling her, this is oblivion, this is the end. Do not worry about what's going to happen in the future, even if the future is within seconds, but hold on, enjoy every last moment. And that seems to be this first line. I'll hold on to feeling until my final breath escapes, gazing upon this world until it fades. Okay. The song goes on to say, fall with me into the other night. We can go beyond the horizon again. Fall with me into the other night, which certainly suggests that the afterlife is another night. That this night, this world, is darkness. Fundamentally, it's a place where there's uncertainty, where there is mystery, where there is a macabre sort of basis to it. I mean, anyone who looks at nature can tell you that there's two ways to look at it. Fundamentally, life is the foundation, or death is the foundation. Evidently, in this suggestion, death is the foundation of this life. So fall with me into the other night. So in other words, there's another death. And the Bible talks about the second death. He could be referring to that. So we go beyond the horizon again. Fall with me until we're out of time. Let the current swallow. So out of time, out of the trajectory of this sort of linear time that we're moving on. So fall out of that, getting out of time, and let the current swallow. In other words, the current is the great, massive, expansive sea of reality. Reality is an ocean, and we are just droplets that once we die, we fall into that, and we lose our distinctiveness and our personalities and our uniqueness. We become one with the all. Very Eastern mystic, I would say, very Eastern perspective. These whispers keep clawing. Your mind is dissolving light. Sink while you bathe in hallucination. Of course, that hallucination is in reference to the hallucinations we have right before we die. It says your mind is dissolving light. Which is kind of interesting, because what it's suggesting is that light is created by the mind. Very Kantian, I guess, maybe. I don't know if they thought that deeply. Maybe it just sounded really nice. Goes on to say, accept this descent into the night, releasing your grasp to induce separation. Plunge into the shadows. Lost in sensation, we're free falling down. I like that, lost in sensation, falling free down. Into the ever black. Can you feel it? These pins and needles. That also seems to me to be in reference to the feeling of when something is going numb, you get these pins and needles. So when you're losing sensation in any limb of your body, you feel those pins and needles when your arm falls asleep or something. Trapped in sensation, see what you have found here. You fell into the dark. Release your grip and face the tide. Accept this damnation. Accepting this damnation, which that's kind of interesting because the damnation seems to be predicated upon the fact that one is damned, and that further assumes that being damned is being judged or being thrown out of something. Anyways, going on. Relinquish flesh temptation of the body and soul. That's good. I like that. Really. So they're getting rid of the temptation of flesh, which I would like to discuss that here in a little bit, because I think that's a distinction between various sects of Satanism, or at least philosophies on Satanism. I'll get back to that. I definitely here. Let me see if I can the ebb and the flow. Nothing confessed. Put me to rest. So he's obviously stating that he doesn't have to confess to anything, to sin, or to, any mistakes he's made in his life. And he says, put me to rest. Azrael guiding me beyond the veil. Azrael is obviously the angel of death in I think, Islam. Very well could have used any other figure. Obitual, which is I'd looked it up. Obitual is basically some having to do with death. Free me of this mortal shell. Obitual is not a figure in any mythologies or religions. It's just a state of being. So free me from this mortal shell. Obviously, the idea is that the body is just a shell that holds within it the soul. Enter into the darkest night. I will sink where I lie. Through the sands of time, through the angel's eye, my final breath, swallowed by the womb of death, swallowed by the womb of death. He certainly wants us to remember that. Whispers are clawing. Well, I like the imagery of clawing, because what it suggests is something nefarious, something malevolent, because clawing is often in reference to some demonic creature that claws at its victims before it devours them. Clawing has always been seen as not only as an implement to hold the victim down while it is devoured, but it is also a terrifying and torturous sort of action. Your mind is dissolving light. Enter the void and fall with me. Enter the void, fall. So it goes, release your grip and face the tide, accepting this damnation. Relinquish flesh temptation of the body and soul, the ebb and the flow, nothing confessed, put me to rest. Azrael guiding me beyond the veil. I really like that. Azrael guiding me beyond the veil. I really like that because it's, when you look at Azrael, it could be, or one could associate Azrael with the Grim Reaper or with death. And it kind of reminds me of that song, that old song by Blue Oyster Cult called Don't Fear the Reaper, which in that song, there's almost a love that is felt between the woman who I'm not so sure if she's committing suicide or she's clearly on her death. She's about to die. And if you've heard the song, listen to the final stanza, the final verses, and you'll hear a part where this woman is, about to die, and she sees death. And there is almost a love that one feels for death. It's very, very dramatic. It's very touching in a sense. It romanticizes death, I suppose, and makes it less grim, oddly enough. So in this line reminds me of something from Blue Oyster Cult. Azrael guiding me beyond the veil. So guiding is a term which is typically reserved for someone helping you. So very, very rarely do we think of death as being something helpful. It's something we try to avoid. But in this instance, it's not something to avoid, but something to give into, something to submit to. So I don't know. I really like that line. Habitual, free me of this mortal shell. Enter into the darkest night. So you can't get any darker than this night. It's completely dark. There's no light. Everything is feeling, emotion. And I don't even know if there is emotion. I don't know. I don't know what type of consciousness one would have in this state of being. I'm not reading lyrics. This is what I'm thinking. If you were to dissolve into this hellfire, I don't know what type of sensation you would have. I don't know if you would just have conscious knowledge, or thought, or imagination. I don't know. I don't know, what it would be like. I can't really imagine. But it goes on, through the sands of time, through the angel's eye, my final breath, swallowed by the womb of death, again, swallowed by the womb of death. Sink while you bathe in hallucination. So the idea is that you're hallucinating. My final breath, swallowed by the womb of death. I like this next line because it's very powerful. It says, as you pass through the fucking gate. So it's basically saying that this is an emphatic, powerful, very significant, and just powerful. As you pass through the fucking gate, they're screaming it, descending towards the end faster. So obviously you pick up speed as you're going through the. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about a few themes here. First, I wanted to talk a little bit about the difference between various satanic perspectives. Obviously, this is a very satanic styled song because it seems to be suggesting that when we die, we go to hell. And there's no way to escape it, so you might as well honor Satan or something. I don't know. Because Satan lets you do what you want. God obviously restricts your behavior. So the difference between the satanic perspectives, this is my opinion, and I'm just thinking out loud here, is the Stoicism and Epicureanism. Now, Stoicism and Epicureanism are two schools of thought from ancient philosophy, or from ancient Greece. They were philosophical schools. The Stoic philosophy, which actually comes from the word stoa, which means a porch, because the Stoics would teach on sort of a porch. It was outside, very similar to most philosophical schools. They weren't what you would typically think of a school, where you have this person standing in front of a board in a lecture hall. It was rather an individual walking around talking, just like I'm talking to you, and they would talk about ideas. Well, that's where the word Stoic comes from. However, Stoicism is much more specific than that. Stoicism is the idea that you are fated, you are destined. Things are inevitable. Reality functions by a certain trajectory, and there's nothing you can do about it. And the key to the ideal life is to accept that, is to assent. The word that they typically use, you find most Stoics use, like Marcus Aurelius and others, is to assent. You assent to it. You agree to it, in other words. And the more you agree to it, the more you embrace the entirety of reality, which would be the good and the bad. Obviously, most people want to just embrace or honor the good, but they don't want to honor or recognize the bad, the death, the pain, the suffering, the disappointments, and all of the bad things that happen to us in life. Stoics ask us to embrace it all, because it is all part of one grand story or one grand event, which is the great cosmos. Now, and Epicureanism is the opposite of this. And some consider it to be the lowest form of Greek philosophy. However, some people could consider it the highest. Epicureanism is the idea that one should pursue pleasure. It's not, the Epicureans weren't so much as interested as identifying a specific philosophy or ontological perspective on reality. They were much more interested in how you reacted to or how you responded to the challenges you have in life. And how you respond to these challenges is by always going toward what brings you pleasure. Pleasure is the ultimate goal of life. It's not to adhere to a specific set of virtues. It's not to assent to the nature of reality, but it is for one primary purpose, and that is pleasure. Now, the reason why I bring these two up in terms of Satanism is that ultimately you have two perspectives in Satanism, and I would say the latter, Epicureanism, is the most common, and I would venture to say you may not even be able to see, or may not see any modern versions of Satanic Stoicism. I'll explain it a little bit. Maybe Crowley would probably have a little bit of Stoicism in it, even though he certainly advocated for pleasure. But he found that pleasure was not everything. Well, first, Epicureanism. Most Satanic philosophies teach, as opposed to abstinence, you should practice, what's that word? Got abstinence, and you got just doing what you want, just indulgence, just indulging in things, enjoying yourself, right? As long as it doesn't hurt anyone. Have as much sex as you like, eat what you want, cuss, say what you want, whatever. Just do whatever makes you happy, brings you fulfillment. Just indulge, right? Well, that's very Epicurean, and that's common in the Church of Satan, particularly the Satanic Temple. They seem to be very much advocates of indulgence, as long as it doesn't hurt other people, obviously. So they keep that humanistic side to it. That could be an entire podcast of itself. How humanism comes into play in modern forms of Satanism. Now, in some traditional forms of Satanism, we can't really use the word Satan because a lot of these ancient religions weren't using the term Satan. They were using terms like Baal or Moloch or other deities. But in those traditions, the idea was that there are really negatively powerful elements in the world. And you need to recognize these elements. You look at a volcano. I mean, if you get as rudimentary as possible, a lot of ancient cultures would see a volcano as a god. And that volcano has a lot of power, has a lot of influence, shapes the landscape, and in some cases could be seen as the creator of landscapes. So from that perspective, it would be God, a god or God. And that God would not be a nice, sweet, loving God of light, but a God of destruction, God of darkness, because it blots out the sun. And that would be a form of Stoicism, because one would see that one has to embrace it. One has to say, look, this thing brings destruction. How do I deal with it? Well, you deal with it by recognizing that the ultimate nature of reality is destruction. The ultimate nature of reality is darkness. And light is just light and goodness and sweetness and things that feel good are just sort of accidental characteristic traits. We could get in, I'm not going to get into the discussion on the Platonic good, beautiful, and true. I'm not really, that's not the point of this podcast right now. It's just talking about these lyrics and the differences between various satanic sects. But from that perspective, if you were to term these ancient traditions as satanic, because they might look like the Satanists described in the Bible and in other religious texts as someone who is opposed to creation, someone who is opposed to, well, creation that's helpful to humans, right? If you were to look at that from that perspective, a being that is anti-God or anti-religion, the traditional religions of God, then they would be satanic figures. So from that perspective, you could see it as a Stoic philosophy, where you're not trying to indulge in pleasures, but you're rather trying to, at times, suppress those pleasures, because those pleasures aren't always what is beneficial in life. Sometimes coming to the reality and assenting to the way things are brings far less misery than just indulging, because when you indulge, you put things off. You enjoy these superficial pleasures while ignoring the most pressing issues, which are your existential struggles, your very existence itself. So from that perspective, that would be a form of satanic stoicism. Now, as far as Crowley and others, Crowley obviously wasn't what you would call a traditional Satanist, even though some would consider him, advocating some form of Satanism. He's too complicated to really discuss right now as his views and beliefs. But let's just say that Crowley certainly was balanced between Epicureanism and Stoicism, because if you look at his sex magic, for example, that's a very confusing topic for some people, but his sex magic certainly advocated for abstinence so that a lot of power would come from the act of emission once one were to engage in sex. So, but I'm not going to get into that, but he didn't always advocate for just indulgence. He was more balanced. As far as Anton LaVey, he certainly advocated for indulgence as well, but the indulgence seemed to be more just a contrarian to the ascetic perspectives of Christian thought. So it was just kind of like just an anti-Christian sort of perspective, possibly. I don't know. That's a mixed bag. I don't want to get into an argument with anyone about that. We could certainly delve into the thought of Anton LaVey and Aleister Crowley at some time, and it'd be very interesting. But I'm just talking about these different perspectives. So going back again, when we talk about, let's go back to Stoicism just real quick, and then we'll move on to Ghost. Stoicism taught, well, first let's talk about the Greeks. The Greeks felt that reality was made up of four essences: earth, air, fire, water. The big question always for the Greeks was, what was the fundamental essence? Because you had these four essences, but which one did all of them come from? Many Greek philosophers felt that there was a quintessence, and they wanted to know what that quin means 5. There was a fifth essence. In many pagan occult traditions, there is the pentagram, which represents earth, air, fire, water, and there's this thing called spirit. Spirit's not something you can see or observe, but it's something that exists nonetheless as a metaphysical principle. But as far as the Stoics, they did choose. As you know, like Heraclitus, for example, felt that ultimately all reality was made, it came from water. There were some that felt it came from air, and so forth. But the Stoics definitely believed that everything came from fire. In fact, they believed that all things would return back to fire in the great conflagration, the time when all of the cosmos would go back to its original state. You even see that in Viking mythology, although it was the void, and one of those worlds was Muspelheim, which is the world of fire. At least you can see echoes of the idea that there is a primal state of being that is fire. Now, why I say this is that this song is not talking about someone going to hell in the Christian Judeo-Christian, well, I wouldn't even say Judeo, because the Jewish, if you look at the old Jewish scriptures, and we'll talk about this right now here in a sec, they don't discuss a hellfire. We see hellfire more in the New Testament. And the reason why, I think, this is my opinion, I'd like to do some more research on this. I might completely be wrong, but I think that it was the influence of the Greek thought. At the time, Stoicism was probably the most popular philosophical tradition during the time of Jesus and during the time of the apostles and the church fathers, the early theologians, who were all instrumental in the creation of, or in the development of, Christian doctrine, as well as penning the New Testament, as the apostles did. Obviously, the influence of Stoic philosophy was there, and that influence had to do with fire, the most primal element. Now, I would think, this is just my opinion, that if you were to see, or to look at, or to sort of think about what separation from God would be, it seems it would be going back to the primal, that the human, if they weren't brought to eternal life, they would be brought to eternal death, that they would be separated from God, and therefore they would not receive eternal life because they weren't in Christ Jesus. So if they're not in Christ Jesus, and they're not regenerated through the saving power of grace of Christ, then they would have to burn, because ultimately the basic nature of physical reality, not the spiritual reality, but the physical reality, would be fire. So it seems logical, in my opinion, that the development of the doctrine of hell, in terms of it being fire, I'm not saying that separation from God is not a real thing. That's an interesting discussion in itself. But from a theological perspective, it seems that that's could be where the doctrine came from, and that's why we see it so much in the New Testament, because of the influence of of Stoicism. Yes, Neoplatonism did influence the New Testament as well, but that's another thing. So hellfire was made popular by the Stoic fire, and they had heard about it from the Greeks. So, to me, what Lorna Shore is singing about is this process, which I don't think that they believe people even go to heaven. They think that everyone just goes back to that eternal state of fire. But they're not obviously suggesting that this is a negative thing. Rather, I think that they're suggesting that it is just the way it is, and that it can be kind of exhilarating, and it can be kind of intense, just like a heavy metal concert is intense. See, it says, as you pass through the fucking gate, descending towards the end faster. See, it seems to be suggesting that this is an exciting and powerful event, and one that is not necessarily bad, nor is it good. It's just powerful, and that one will have much different experiences once they're absorbed into this new primal sort of essential element of fire, the world of fire, in the great conflagration. So that's the lyrics of Lorna Shore. I think it's a really good song, and I think you should check it out. Now I'm gonna do I'll do a quick one of what is it? Let's see. Let me look it up here. I got it. I got the lyrics for it. If You Have Ghosts. If You Have Ghosts by Rocky Erickson. Let me look up Rocky Erickson a little bit. Rocky Erickson was an American musician. He died only 2019. He died recently. He was born in 1947. Close to my mom's age. He was a founding member and the leader of the 13th Floor Elevators and pioneer of the psychedelic rock genre. I like that name, 13th Floor Elevators. Let's see, mental illness, and this is what's important to mention. See, in 1968, while performing at Hemisphere, whatever that is, Erickson began speaking gibberish. He was soon diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and sent to a Houston psychiatric hospital where he involuntarily received electroconvulsive therapy, which is electroshock therapy, something that they don't do anymore. But evidently, clearly, they did back in 1968. And if any of you have seen the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, they will know that even in the early 70s, evidently this was happening. The elevators were vocal proponents of marijuana and psychedelic drug use, and were subject to extra attention from law enforcement agencies. So after this, the law enforcement agencies were really looking at this band. In 1969, Erickson was arrested for possession of a single marijuana joint in Austin. Clearly, it wasn't marijuana that made him sort of devolve into this paranoid schizophrenic episode, nor was it the cause of his paranoid schizophrenia. It's obviously something he was just born with. Facing a potential 10-year incarceration, Erickson pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity to avoid prison. He was first sent to the Austin State Hospital. I wonder where that is. I used to live in Austin. Interesting. That's somewhere in Austin. After several escapes, he was sent to Rusk State Hospital in Rusk, Texas. I have no idea where Rusk, Texas is. Where he was subjected to more electroconvulsive therapy. Well, that's just great. I'm sure that really helped. And incarceration. So they were shooting him up with electrical shock, and they were putting him in jail. Erickson pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity to avoid prison. He was, I read that. He was, Thorazine treatments. So he got electroshock there and Thorazine, which makes you more crazy. Ultimately remaining in custody until 1972. That's the year I was born. Wow. During his time at Rusk, he continued writing songs and poetry. Family and friends managed to smuggle out some of these poems, and in 1972 self-published the book Openers. Boy, I meant to read that. That sounds really interesting, because his lyrics are really cool lyrics and really deep. Intending to use the proceeds to hire a lawyer, various sources claim approximately 1,000 copies of Openers were printed. How many copies were actually sold remains unknown. 6 tracks from the 1999 Erickson collection, Never Say Goodbye, were also recorded during his time at Rusk. Okay, so he is an interesting character. He was suffering from paranoid schizophrenia. So let's get into the lyrics. Okay. And if you know the song, if you know the band Ghost, you probably heard the song. I saw Ghost live, and they performed this live, and it was fantastic. And I'll tell you what my opinion of this song is. Okay, it says, if you have ghosts, then you have everything. Again, it says, if you have ghosts, then you have everything. Okay, we'll stop right there. What's that mean? If you have ghosts, then you have everything. Well, ghosts are not the same type of ghost that we are probably thinking of. A ghost that haunts one's house, a ghost that makes creaks at night. He must be talking about something else. So he's not talking about just haunting disembodied spirits, because we know ghosts can mean a lot of things. I mean, there's a play by Henrik Ibsen called Ghosts, and the play is not about disembodied spirits. It's about things that had happened in the past. It's about extensions of the self. It's about, in this case, not in the case of the play, but in the case of these lyrics, could be in reference to other personalities, subconscious Jungian archetypes that one connects with, or actual spirits. So let's just go with that, where it could be a Jungian archetype that one is connecting with on the subconscious level, or it could be a spirit, and that is my opinion. So if you have ghosts, you have everything, which if you have them, if you're connected, when it says you have ghosts, evidently we all have ghosts. But I would go even further to say it's suggesting if you recognize you have ghosts, then you have everything. If you're connecting with these ghosts, if you're regularly communicating with these ghosts, which if he had paranoid schizophrenia, he was clearly communicating with ghosts. Whether one wants to argue whether they exist or just exist psychologically on a psychological level, and that would be an interesting argument in itself, whether we are We are in company with others when we recognize that we have others in our company. And what that would mean is that psychologically, if we recognize or we feel as though there are others in our company, and physically there aren't, it would not matter. Just as long as we feel that way, then we have everything. So you can say anything you want, and you can do anything you want. If you have ghosts, then you have everything. Now, this is interesting because this changes the entire tenor of the song. You can say anything you want. When I'm in company with other people, I can't say anything I want. I can't say, hey, you look fat. Hey, I don't like that mustache. Hey, I don't like the way you talked to me last week. That's going to piss them off. But when you're in the company of spirits or ghosts being psychological entities that you create, or it could be spirits, or could, as we said, Jungian archetypes that we communicate with, possibly, whatever. You can say what you want to them because they know everything anyways, right? About you. They've observed everything. So you can say, fuck you, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. You can say what you want, and you can do anything you want. You're not going to be judged. These ghosts are not going to say, wow, you shouldn't have drank that. Wow, you ate too much. Wow, you shouldn't have watched that movie. Wow, you cussed too much, which I get charged with that a lot. But you're not going to be judged. You can do anything you want, because if you have ghosts, then you have everything. Now, this is an interesting one. Never does that. One never does that. If you call it surprise, okay, before we go, if you call it surprise, there it is. One never does that. What's that mean? There's two ways of looking at that. You could look at that line as that's something you never do. One never does that. One never, or, and this is my perspective, my view, and if I'm wrong, by all means, tell me in the comments, because I'd love to hear other people's perspectives. I might even have this wrong, because maybe Rocky Erickson had explained what all of this means, and has his own perspective. All I have is a graduate level hermeneutics, where you uncover meaning from texts, particularly biblical texts, by a variety of means. And there's not much here. I've not done a lot of research on Rocky Erickson, so it's not a very good hermeneutical or exegetical analysis, but I'll do my best. Anyways, back to the line. One never does that. I don't think that what it means is that that's not something you do. One never does that. I think one never does that means that having one person gives you everything you want. That you need more than one person, one personality, interacting with, communicating with you regularly to give you everything. So it says one never does that would be a completely different interpretation, or a completely different perspective than you don't do that. So I think, given the sort of logical flow of the lyrics and what makes the most sense of what has been said already about if you have ghosts, you have everything. If you're alone, you're sitting there alone, you're by yourself, you're one person, well, that's never going to do it. That's not going to give you everything you need. But if you have more than one person, particularly a ghost, and by a ghost is someone within you, some spirit, some entity that is not fleshly, but is just an ancient or non-temporal entity, or if you want to go into the psychological, some psychological personality within you, and based on the schizophrenia that he exhibited, that would be perfectly right up his alley, is that having more than one person or individual communicating with you and connecting with you gives you everything. It goes on to say, if you call it surprise, there it is. The moon to the left of me is a part of my thoughts, is a part of me, is me. One never does that. That's a little... Okay, so if you call it surprise, there it is. I guess, and this is, again, just an assumption. If you call it surprise, there it is. It's a surprise to know that you're never alone. So to me, what he seems to be suggesting here, I could be wrong again, that if you call it surprise, there it is. There's that figure. There's that individual. If you just sit there and meditate for a minute, just like in prayer, Christians pray. As soon as you pray, meditate, you find that you're not alone. There's always something there, someone there. So it goes on, the moon to the left of me is a part of my thoughts. Left, could be left-hand path, I don't know. What are left thoughts as far as right brain thoughts? So, what are left brainers? I cannot remember. I always get these mixed up. Left brain. I'm thinking a left brain is the creativity, right? Left brain. The theory of left brain. What is left brain? Left brain personality. Let's see what that says. The theories of people are either left brain or right brain. If you are mostly analytical and method. Oh, left brain is the logical. So that doesn't. Well, heck with that. That's not going to go with my idea. So the moon to the left of me, maybe he's referring to it's logical. I don't know. But the moon to the left of me is a part of my thoughts. However, maybe that's an accidental perspective. It could be the left or the right. The point is he's saying that everything in his purview of perception, everything he sees, is a part of his thoughts. That's a very idealistic perspective, that everything is a part of his thoughts. Almost solipsistic, really. Very solipsistic. I mean, one could argue that this is an argument for solipsism in some sense. So it goes on, is a part of me, is me. So it's not just a part of him, it is him. And one never does that. And I love this. Okay, now we're getting into some really good lyrics. I like that. In the night, I am real. And it says, in the night, I am real. God, I love that. I'll tell you why I love that. Because what it's saying is that in those times where you can't see everything, because that's what the night pretty much represents, is the times we can't perceive, we can't see, we just know based on feeling or intuition. So he intuitively knows things. That's when he is real. He's not able to see everything and distinguish everything. So he's not able to disassociate this experience with that experience. He all sees it as coming from him. So in the night, I am real. Because during the day, you don't even know if you're real. You don't know what you are, because everything is vying for your attention and seems more real than you. The whole Cartesian meditations on the first philosophy, where you have all these perceptions, these sensations, the brightness of the sun, the trees, the wind, the smells, the fragrances. All of these things are just vying for your attention, just sort of occupying your thoughts. And you really aren't able to self-reflect, because you're just inundated with all of this stuff that's coming at you. But in the night, you don't have that. And you're able to self-reflect much more effectively. So in the night is when he is real. He feels the most real. And I think we can all identify with that. In the night, there's a mystery about it. There's a sense of wonder. There's a sense of what if, possibility. I love it. Okay, and then he goes on to say, the moon to the left of me is a part of my thoughts. Okay, see, we were forever's the wind. So I guess that forever's the wind, that could be a reference to the Holy Spirit. The wind is constantly moving. You don't know which way. Jesus talked about the wind when he was talking to Nicodemus, and he was talking about the Holy Spirit. And he was like, the Holy Spirit is like the wind. It comes and goes. From whence it came, no one knows from what direction, or which direction is going to go. Because we as people, are finite. We don't know the trajectory of everything. I mean, a meteorologist might disagree with that, but the model or the symbol of the wind, not necessarily the literal wind, but the symbol of the wind, as far as the average person is concerned, is an unknowable force. And he's saying that forever is that unknowable force. And again, it's a part of my thoughts. It's a part of me. So is me. So he is saying that he is forever the wind. It's a part of him, and it is him. He is, in a Sartrean sense, going back to the whole argument of free will, he doesn't know what he might do next. He doesn't know what his intentions are. All he knows is that he is real, and particularly in the night. It goes on to say, in the night I'm real, and in the night I'm real. Now it goes on to say, this is interesting, which I've actually argued with my cousin about this, because we've talked about this. He's a huge fan of Ghost as well. I think he might have actually come to agree with me on my interpretation of this lyric, or this line. But in the next line is, I don't want my fangs too long. I don't want my fangs too long. That's interesting too. What does that mean, fangs too long? Well, the fangs are part of your teeth. It's what you bite off, right? It's what you bite off. This is my view. There's two views. There's two potential views. There's probably more than this, and again, if you know of another perspective or another interpretation, please include them in comments. I'd love to hear them. But my interpretation, I'll give two interpretations. I'll give mine. Two are, one, it could be that the fangs represent that which is aggression, that which is tearing at the world and just sort of making itself known in the world. It's the fangs. Because when you think of fangs, you think like Dracula, a vampire, and it's something scary. It's something that you're using to scare people off or to intimidate. And from that perspective, you would look at that and say, well, you don't want to intimidate people too much, but you want to intimidate them a little bit just to keep them at bay. I don't think that's the case. I think that fangs here is in reference to biting something off. When you bite something off, when you're trying to eat something or chew something. In the broader sense, I would say that you're biting off reality. You're biting off what you know. This is very epistemic, in my opinion. Epistemic and experiential. I would say epistemic and experiential factor in these lyrics. I think that the fangs represent the epistemic, in that there's only so much you can know. If you try to know too much, if you try to delve too deeply, if you go down the rabbit hole, you're going to get lost. If you try too little, you just ignore reality or ignore what is true. So it's best to kind of keep a balance. Also, too, experiential. There's only so much you can experience. Anxiety is going to draw you to try to do too much because you're wanting to capture it all. Just like with fangs, you try to bite off more than you can chew. I remember one time I was at a buffet, and I was a little kid. My dad says, boy, your eyes are bigger than your stomach. And this line kind of reminds me of that. Your eyes are bigger than your stomach. Don't try to bite off more than you can chew, basically. I think that seems to be okay. So going on, it says, the moon to the left of me is a part of my thoughts, is a part of me. It is me. Forever's the wind is a part of my thoughts. Goes on, blah, blah. And then he goes on, he says, if you have ghosts, then you have everything. And continues, if you have ghosts, then you have everything. And I think he ends with that part to remind us that in life, no matter what, you have these spirits, these invisible spirits, whether you want to call them parts of your personality, whether you want to call them Jungian archetypes that exist that you connect with, whether you want to call them actual spirits which exist, which a Satanist would call demons, a Christian would call the Holy Spirit. It could be a ghost as opposed to ghosts, or it could be angels. If you're a light worker in the occult, in paganism, you would say it's some sort of good light spirits. If you're Crowley, you would say ethers. But anyways, the point is there are these things out there, or in us, however you want to interpret or characterize it, that you can connect with. And to always remember that they're there, because if you don't remember that they're there, and I think the main lesson of this is that in life, one of the problems is that things can be too light. If you have too good of a life, and you're just too good, when I'm saying materialistically, from a material standpoint, you have all you need, you have money, you have all the food you need, you have a house, you have, everything's paid off. You take that obviously for granted, but more importantly, it becomes part of you. And it begins to redefine you. But according to Rocky Erickson, you are the wind. You are the night. You are the moon. You're the things that are mysterious. You're not the material things that you buy or the material things that you bite off when your fangs are too long. But you are the mystery. You are the part of reality that is like the wind that Christ talked about, that you don't know which way it's going, and you don't know where it has come from. All you know it is there, and you enjoy it while you still can. And I think that this is a great song. It's one of my favorite songs. Probably, I hate to say it's my favorite song by Ghost because Ghost didn't write it, right? But it is my favorite song by Ghost. It's one of those songs I'll play over and over again, which is really weird. There's several others. We could go over those sometime. I would like to do one on, don't laugh, guys, but, well, two songs, actually. Vanessa Carlton, 1,000 Miles. I think that's the greatest song of all time. I know. You're going to laugh, but I really think it is. In terms of lyrics, it's fucking amazing. And then Sky Full of Stars by Coldplay. I think that's a great song too. I like to go over those. But that's about all the time I have for today. But until next time, you guys stay cool. And if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section. As well, please subscribe if you like the content. And if you'd like to get on here with me and shoot the shit, or if you're someone who disagrees with my perspective, whether you're a fundy Christian or a new atheist, and you see my position as being too namby-pamby or too flighty or too lukewarm, as it says in Revelation, where I'd rather you hot or cold, but if you're lukewarm, I'll spew you out of your mouth. If you see me as any of those, please, I'd be happy to discuss it with you. So you have a good one, and I will see you next time.